My guests are seated in the studios. I have joining us Hussaini Issa. He is a former MP for Okankwe North constituency. Good morning.
Good morning,
How are you doing?
Very well.
You're fine? You had a good weekend?
Yeah, I think it was
You rested and
yeah.
all. Okay, that's nice to know. And also joining us from the side of the NDC, he is a member of the NDC legal team as well. Counsel is here. Lawyer DG Tamaklo, good morning.
Good morning,
How are you?
Bella. I'm okay.
You had a good weekend?
Yeah, yes. It's been generally good. And good morning to my brother, Hussaini. And as you're aware, last week Friday was the 30th anniversary of the NDC.
Yes.
So, as a political party that I proudly associate with, I can only wish us well. It's going to be a year-long celebration. We'll be doing a lot more of documentary to demonstrate what in 30 years we've been able to achieve with the support of the people of Ghana. And I have always maintained, but for the NDC, I do not know where Ghana will be today. There's more room for improvements as we continue this forward march to make this country better. I can only encourage as many people to associate with this great party. In fact, the greatest in Ghana.
Okay.
Yes. And like you pointed out, a very happy birthday to two of our comrades, Eric Ajay and Abna Bagbo. They are part of our communication setup. And they're also in the law school. I wish them good luck.
Definitely.
The
good luck
exams
to
is
them.
coming up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure we're going to start talking about how many people passed and how many didn't pass again.
Soon.
But all the best to everyone who's getting ready to write the law school exams. But in touting your achievements under the NDC, would you say that fighting floods has been one of, your biggest challenges?
I think that, I've always come to see publications of flooding issues as early as the 1960s. There had been a fundamental problem with Accra. Unlike Tema, Accra does not appear to have a proper plan. And so you have situations where people have had to build on water courses and others. In fact, if you look at some of the principal communities in Greater Accra, for instance, Jolo, the Ganwe Jolo, it's more like the bank of, and that has been the place Jolo. In those days, if they gave it to you, you wouldn't want to be there because it was like a waterlogged area. Now, we have allowed people to build on water courses. And the thing with water is that whether you like it or not, it will find its way. And so if you build on its way, it will show you that it is the master and nothing more. And so you have a situation where we have to contend with this. I mean, it's like aged okra tree that you are trying to bend. There's going to be a problem. But what we have done over the period is to invest heavily by way of either machinery, by way of dredging, by way of creating culverts, among other things. It has been a continuous process. And I recall vividly how we took over the construction of the drains around Car Price. It used to be very terrible. So President Kufuor, where Dizingov is, President Kufuor has started that initiative. We came to continue. By the time we came, it was so silted, even though it had just nearly been constructed. It was so silted that we had to work on it. In fact, I recall the attempt to even bring the Kunti project and the subsequent challenges that came with it. I also do recall just around Kalkudi, where the new mosque is, there had been this flooding issue. So that construction had also started, among other things, within the other metropolis. But like I always say, it's still work in progress. You are trying to, basically reverse age-old problem. It's always a difficult thing. But definitely, it's one of the things that we'll put in our achievement, yes.
It's one of the things,
yes.
Even though, if we look at even June 3rd disaster and how that played out,
but
clearly,
if you recall,
we hadn't done much.
No, if you recall the June 3rd disaster, the greater part of that problem was not, what you call the flood. It was what happened at the petrol filling station directly opposite the APSA, just by the Ghana Commercial Bank. That is what created a bigger part of the problem. But again, it was associated with the flooding. right?
Yeah.
Remember that it was just around that time that the construction of the Circle Dubai was also ongoing. So it created its own engineering problem. Yeah, it was around 2015. Why? the Dubai project got completed in 2016. So that was in the midst of the construction. It created its own engineering problem. But long and short of it is that it has always been work in progress. And I strongly believe that we would all put, our hands together to ensure that we get this flooding problem resolved once and for all. It may not be a problem that we can resolve forever.
Okay.
We can only minimize the distractions associated with it with the passage of time. Yes.
But in minimizing, yesterday we heard from the Works and Housing Minister, Honorable Asenso Bachi, and he says that in actual fact we need about $5 billion to tackle Ghana's floods. And of course, that is even based on some research that was done in the past. We might have to review it, and that would mean even reviewing the amount that is needed to fight this. Let's quickly take a look at what he said yesterday during the Meet the Press that was organized by the Ministry of Information in collaboration with the Works and Housing Ministry. You realize that every Sunday, or at least every other Sunday, there's an update from one of the ministries. Yesterday was the turn of the Works and Housing Ministry. Let's listen to what the minister had to say.
Control measures under the 2018-2020 National Flood Control Program has been the highest commitment by any government in our history, committing approximately 450 million Ghana cedis. To date, the 2028-2020 National Flood Control Programs have completed the construction of some 35 kilometers of drains, whilst over 1,000 kilometers of drains have been excavated, rechanneled, and maintained across the country.
He said additional funding would be. Many lives have been lost and properties were
channeled and maintained across the country.
He said additional funding would be required to permanently deal with the flooding.
To address the flooding issues in the country, the country will need about $5 billion. $5 billion to be able to address the flooding challenges across the country. But this was done some time ago, and I'm sure that if we have to use it, we have to have a review of it, because a lot has happened since then.
The ministry, he noted, will support MMDCEs and DCEs to pull down structures on waterways.
And that is Honorable Asenso Bachi. He's the Minister for Works and Housing. And you heard him clearly. He says that we'll need about $5 billion. And that is even an approximation, because it is based on a study that was done in the past. And if we review it, we might even need to review the amount required to fight floods. Hussaini, this is what the minister is telling us. $5 billion based on a study. But unfortunately, we're not told exactly what this study proposed. Don't you think that it would have been prudent to at least get some information on this research work that was conducted?
Good morning to you again, Bella. Good morning to my friend. He used to be my good friend. Now he's dropped to just my friend. So
what did he do wrong?
He knows.
When
he
I
knows,
predicted that you lose to
Oh,
look at you.
Are you still holding on to that?
Look at you.
Are you still holding on to that, Hussaini?
Let's
Should he predict that maybe you will win?
Good morning to my constituents.
It was
I was now very quiet.
I came to the
my word.
to ensure that the dream came.
Oh,
But
my
that's
word.
fine.
It was part of the legal team that came to do some skirmishes there, but hey. Anyway, a good morning to my constituents in Okai North. I'm hoping they had a good weekend, and wishing them a productive week. Drainage and flooding issues in Accra and Ghana as a whole. It's become an annual ritual. When the rains set in, then it becomes topical. We will be talking about this issue as we lose lives, lose people, lose property. And then the dry season comes, and then we forget and we go back to our ways. Growing up in Accra, areas in a place like North Carnation that I knew were swampy areas. Today, for some weird reason and for some, I'm wondering whether they get the engineering and the planning of the drainage in such areas right. For swampy areas that we knew, places that we went to catch fish as young boys, today are all concreted and houses have been built on them. Sometimes I wonder, it's not just North Carnation getting into a place we used to call Tesano Gardens and all of that. It's been transformed so much that sometimes I wonder how we're able to do that. Just like what my brother here said, Jaw Wulu, it means jaw, which is a valley. Wulu, it's a big valley. So it connotes that it's a water path. Unfortunately, our attitudes over the years have not helped the situation. People know what the rules are. There are assemblies in place to ensure that the right things are done. And for us to have encouraged this behavior over the years, and then ultimately, it has to cost us this much to be able to rectify what we could have done naturally by ensuring that the existing laws were actually respected, or we went by the existing laws. It is quite instructive that we don't look at this in a piecemeal like we've done in the past. Unfortunately, my brother was referring to the Odo River. Odo used to be a river. Now, by some gist of I don't know whether engineering price or whatever, we've been able to get the river into a gutter. And when it rains right from the Kwapim Hills, this passes through a chunk of my constituency, where I come from actually. And it's causing havoc. In 2008, under the leadership of His Excellency President Kufuor, work was started right from the sea through Alajo to Abofu, and we are still at Abofu. Not an inch has been continued since, to the extent that even where the drains got to, the slabs are wearing off. When I got opportunity to be a member, of Parliament for the area, I followed up on quite a number of projects. They mentioned the Conti project, there's ASDEP, there's Garrett. All of these are looking at specific aspects. And Garrett is quite interesting because I know the project is still ongoing. I know they are at about the procurement stage. Hopefully, we should be able to see work starting very, very soon. I am looking forward to it because the road in front of my house, where I live, is actually included in the Garrett project. So I'm looking forward to it. So
the minister says it will start hopefully end of this year.
I know because I've seen the designs and I'm still following up. So I know where they are with the Garrett project. There's a lot of consultation and the community and participation in the design. That's how come I know that Garrett is actually happening, and it's going to happen. But 5 billion to be thrown. Sometimes when I hear figures like this, I look at alternative or the opportunity cost. Although if we had adhered to existing bylaws and building regulations, probably we wouldn't have needed 5 billion. And I think that this project is also just not an infrastructural one, but our own attitudes. And it's something that going forward we should have a look at it. Not too long ago, the president actually instructed that MMDCs dealt with physical structures that are obstructing waterways and are causing havoc. I'm perfectly in sync with the call of the president.
You are?
Yes, I am in
He's
sync.
asking that people who have been mandated to do their work now would have people reporting to the president on what they are doing, and you think that was right?
Sorry,
Are they not mandated by law?
Yes.
To ensure, the assemblies are supposed to ensure that before you build, you must seek a permit, you must get a permit from them. People have gone ahead to build without permit over these years. And it has to take the president to now step in and say that I'm going to put together a team to ensure that they come and report to me on pulling down of structures along waterways and building without permits?
That is the ideal situation. Unfortunately, we are not at the ideal situation. Wrong has been done. And when wrong is done, you have to correct it. And in correcting the wrong that's been done, we have to take some very stringent measures, and that's what the president seems to be doing. I mentioned that. Look, growing up, a place like Tesano Gardens, even North Carnation, that's the area that I am quite with. So it's in the right. The call is in the right direction.
How did we arrive at this $5 billion?
How did, like the minister said, I want city and profess to have seen whatever work was done to arrive at the figure. But he's saying that there's a study in the past. I'm sure in the coming days we will see the report, we'll see the details. But it's not this 5 billion, like the minister mentioned. It's not just for Accra. It's for the whole country.
Okay.
The whole country. And I'm thinking that it's something that we have to take a holistic look at, and not a piecemeal thing that we have done, because it's integrated. Sometimes when we resolve the problem in one area, the problem just moves to the next to the next stage. And I think that is in the right direction that we are wanting to look at this. Albeit it's a colossal sum. 5 billion is quite a lot of money. But then again, that's where I will look at the opportunity cost. If we had adhered to existing building regulations and all of that, we wouldn't have to throw such a colossal sum at a problem that we could have averted. But this is where we are, and we need to save lives and property. And so if that is what we have to do, I'm sure that as a government, as a people, we find a solution to this annual ritual of people losing their lives and property, and so we can move on.
We're at a point where we've been told we don't have enough money, which is why even e-levy came about, because we're told that we need to generate more income so we can also use it for some level of development. At this point, I mean, we've had to even receive some money from World Bank for the Garrett project. We couldn't even fund it on our own because, well, World Bank is sponsoring that. So how are we going to raise $5 billion at a time when we're being told that we don't have money?
I mean, this is not a one-time event. It's not going to be a one-time event, and I don't expect us to even attempt to resolve this within one budget cycle. We could structure it. Once there's a report, I am sure the report will also recommend how we should go. Maybe we'll prioritize areas that are in immediate need of such drainage works. We would do and ultimately move. Now we know that Accra is one of the areas, so probably we tackle the problem in Accra and then we can move on to other areas. It's not going to be an event, it's going to be a process. Nobody thinks that we can get 5 billion at a go within one budget cycle to resolve this perennial problem. And so I expect that if we break it down and if we have a program in place, we can over time be able to fix this problem.
But the Garrett project has stalled. It's been how many years? Almost about what, 7 years or so since the Garrett project started.
The initiation
we are still
of this
waiting for work to actually start on the ground, because yesterday the minister said that we're at the procurement stage. And so, I mean, even for something that you'd consider not too big a project, because it is just outdoor drains that they are dredging, which is part of the Garrett project as well. Now, even that has not started after how many years? Do we think that we're really committed to fighting flood?
The Garrett project is quite a very detailed, because it also goes through my constituency. I followed up and I'm still following up. It is a project that spans from the Bray Hills right into the sea. And it covers a number of municipalities and districts. And the consultation has been ongoing. As member of parliament, I attended quite a number of the meetings on consultation with the community and all that. I know people have been appointed in a community, all making inputs. I've seen drawings, and I mean, we have come far. It's delayed, but we should also know, I recollect that whilst in parliament, one of the projects that got delayed as a result of COVID was a Garrett project, because at the time, even the World Bank, their priorities were quite changed into helping resolve the challenges that COVID was bringing to all of us across the world, rather than in physical projects like this. And I think that we have come far. I have the drawings right even on my phone, and the consultations are going on. So I expect, like the minister said, by year end we will probably get some physical work on the ground going.
Council. Let me bring you in. What do you make of this statement that the minister has made? Also on the fact that he says that 450 million Ghana cedis that has been invested in the last 5 years is the biggest investments done by any sitting government.
You see, The issue with the people in authority now is the tendency to, as it were, sound so highfalutin. I say this because, you see, the issue of flood, at least like we've all acknowledged, it's not a recent thing. What governments have always done is to either continue from where another person left off with the ultimate desire of resolving the flood problem. You see, I recall vividly, whilst dealing with this issue, the 2016 manifesto promise of the NPP. For instance, of turning the Odo into more like a recreational facility, among other things. A term of Mr. Akufo-Addo is gone. Nothing has significantly happened to the Odo. What we have been told is that this amount has been expended on dredging, among other things. Now, if you just come and throw figures around and say, oh, 400, this is the biggest. In terms of impact, what is it? Because that, for me, should be the end game of the conversation. You've expended 400 million Ghana cedis, you claim. What has been the impact in minimizing the incidence of flooding? And the scorecard is that we are back to square one. The flood situation has not been helpful. In fact, if you live around West Hill Mall and you are coming towards Weja and it rains, you better stay at home. Because it's basically the slightest rain, there's an issue there. So it is not really the issue of quantum, but what has been the desired outcome of those expenses, so that it doesn't look like we are just putting money into a bottomless pit. That appears to be the conversation. Because you see, if you look at the Odo, almost all the water from, if you look at the topology of Accra, it's sloping. And so you have a situation where water flows from the Brim Mountains and then it's supposed to go into there. So all sand and everything, ordinarily vegetative covers are supposed to be the one to stop the movement of sand carried by water bodies. But today, as we speak, we are even declassified forests. For whatever it's worth.
We're planting trees. We planted about 20
million. Can you imagine the irony? Can you imagine the irony? In 2020, we are declassifying forest reserve and turning around to plant trees. Interesting scenario. Maybe you explain to us further the kind of thinking that goes into declassifying a forest and later planting trees. But we'll deal with that later. But the point I'm making is that, look, we have a situation where we should put numbers into this conversation. If we have expended 400 million, what has been the impact in resolving this perennial, almost becoming part of our politics? I'm sure by June, July next year, myself and Fuseni will be here again to have a conversation on flooding. I strongly believe that one of the things by
then the garage project would have been 5 years.
You know, like you pointed out, it's been 7 years.
Actually, no, it's supposed to have started in 2020 and should end in 2025.
No, the point I'm making is that project. From the time of the implementation, but nothing really had happened. Now, if my brother here is confident that by next year something like this should happen, why not? I can only say hallelujah and praise to God. Because you see, anytime these floods come, I get worried because of the devastating impact. The people who live around Adabraka, Sahara Park, and those environs, is always terrible, the slightest rain, because it gets directly into their houses. I've always wanted the issue of regulatory negligence. Look, you cannot build in Ghana per our local assembly laws and per the Land Use and Spatial, Planning Act. You cannot build in Ghana without a building permit.
So renovating an existing
absolutely. Building. So how are we able to ensure buildings on waterways. What are the local assembly authorities doing, the planning departments? I mean, beyond the fact that sometimes they'll come and write, produce permits, stop work, produce permit. Now I understand some developers go ahead and put on the buildings, produce permit or stop work, produce permit to create a diversion so they will continue with the project. I mean, very simple thing like ensuring that you get building permit before you start. I mean, the advanced country, Europe and others, you can't start a project without all the regulatory permits. But in Ghana, somebody builds a factory before going to EPA for the necessary permit. So I think that there's also an issue of regulatory negligence. If we're able to resolve all of this thing, we'll come back to it. And the question of attitude, our own attitude, I think we need to work on it. If we even get the 5 billion by way of manna from heaven, and we do not change our attitude, we may come back. Today, I'm happy that when it comes to a conversation on flooding, it's no longer an issue of competence. Because in the past, even flooding was associated with incompetence. I am happy we are changing the conversation now. We are looking at more of, finance among other things. It tells us the level at which we are not even honest to ourselves. Look, Kaneshi, the other day somebody took an amateur videos. I don't know whether it was by your station. How today, Kaneshi, the slightest rain, there's flooding. There's something certainly that we can do to forestall this from happening. And I strongly believe that we all need to get together. Except to say that, you see, sometimes government needs to set its priorities right also.
How so?
You see, if we have competing needs, right, and then you are reading about government's, release of funds for projects that do not even, you cannot immediately tell what the benefit will be, then we need to have our priorities right.
Which of these projects are you talking about in particular?
No, today, if you have heard, you have read and seen documentations about over 200 million Ghana cedis from October 2020 released for the National Cathedral project, right? And you compare to what floods does to us immediately. Then you begin to ask the critical question, what exactly are our priorities? Fuseni made a point about even the World Bank agreeing in the midst of COVID that there is a need to rechannel some monies for the purpose of some of these floods and, projects. At that same time, when the World Bank, foreigners, are thinking of helping us solve an immediate problem in the midst of COVID and among other things, we were releasing over 142 million for National Cathedral project.
The finance minister says we'll rake it back.
You see, he is a finance person. It's like someone who does a project with simply cash flow in his mind, without more. He anticipates that, no, this project in future will give me this amount of money. Now, when you ask him the comparative work, how much is the cathedral project in Yamoussoukro given to the government of Ivory Coast annually? At least there should be a comparative study where you can say that in Ghana, their castle, the Cape Coast castle, look at the history behind it. The only reason why someone would want to tour a cathedral is to associate a 300-year history, 400-year history around the building, the architecture, among other things. Now, when you build a cathedral just 2-3 years, and then you say that the number of tourists that goes, someone who will leave Europe to come to Ghana, will prefer the cathedral than going to Cape Coast Castle. Without the benefit of data, a decision that is driven by data, then we'll be dealing with, as someone will say, Igobi is not a plan. You need to have something on the table. How much, in the name of God, is the cathedral in Yamoussoukro given to the government of Ivory Coast? Where is the data? We need to see it. Why in God's name will somebody leave a cathedral in Paris and come to Ghana, a cathedral that is over 400 years old, will leave that and say he's coming to watch a cathedral built just in 2 years in Ghana? Please,
But again, isn't that tourism? Because we're always complaining about the fact that when people come to Ghana, they're very limited in terms of the places that they visit, tourist sites that they visit. So everybody goes to Cape Coast to go and see the Cape Coast Castle. They go to Almina Castle. There's some event in Accra, and that's it. And so is this not another way of bringing in some extra income for the country? Besides, the finance minister said that it's the same way we all complained about not having enough money to start free SHS and all of that. But they still went ahead and implemented, and today it is serving its purpose.
Do you know something? Unfortunately, our friends who communicate for government and the persons associated with this cathedral project have been shifting the goalposts right from the beginning. The building of cathedral was not for tourism. It was Akufo-Addo fulfilling a pledge to his maker without more. It was when we demonstrated that if Bella has a personal pledge with the Almighty God, then Bella should stick to the use of her salary to do that. Now, when Bella decided to use money from TV3 in fulfillment of her personal pledge to God, then they lifted the conversation to the realms of accountability. Then they now shifted the goalposts and said, no, you see, it is not going to be Akufo-Addo's pledge any longer, but the project to bring tourism. Please, what exactly is the motivation for the cathedral? Is it for tourism? Is it Akufo-Addo's pledge? And you have heard respectable men of God in this country make the point that as far as this cathedral is concerned, all they needed from government was land and some preparatory work. Today, over 200 million of taxpayers' money had been pumped into this project at foundation level. And that should be of great concern. And I'm saying that, listen, if today, Bella, you are faced with these two choices, resolving an immediate problem of flooding and building a cathedral, where cathedral or church building is not something that we lack in Ghana, then it begs the question whether you have any appreciation of priorities.
Okay.
That's all the point I'm making.
Fuseni, I'll let you speak shortly. Let's take a quick break. This is still the big issue on TV3Newday. And when we get back, we'll hear from Fuseni Issa on what he makes. And of course, are we setting our priorities right? And why have we not gotten a breakdown of that 450 million Ghana cedis that government says they've invested in addressing floods so far? What have been the benefits?